Hello dear students, my name is Shaina Gupta and I am an assistant professor in RPIIT Technical and Medical Campus. Today we are going to discuss about project evaluation review technique of the project management, that is in short called PERT. So the history of the PERT was that PERT was developed primarily to simplify the planning and scheduling of large and complex projects. It was developed by the US Navy Special Project Office in 1957 to support the US Navy's Polaris nuclear submarine project. Initially, the PERT stood for Program Evaluation Research Task, but by 1959, it was already renamed. In the critical path method, the time estimates are assumed to be known with certainty. In certain projects like research and development, new product introductions, it is difficult to estimate the time of various activities. Hence, the PERT is used in such projects with the probabilistic method using 3 times estimates for an activity rather than a single estimate. If the project has to be completed ahead of the schedule, then the time required for at least one of the critical activity must be reduced. Further, any delay in completing the critical activities will increase the project's duration. The activity which does not lie in the critical path is called a non-critical activity. These non-critical activities may have some slack time. So, how we estimate time in PERT? PERT has defined 4 types of time required to accomplish an activity: optimistic time, most likely time, pessimistic time, and expected time. Optimistic time is denoted as TO. It is the shortest time in which the activity can be completed. Most likely time, TM, it is the probable time required to perform the activity. Pessimistic time, TP, it is the longest estimated time required to perform an activity. Then last comes total expected time. Total expected time is calculated as TE equals to optimistic time plus 4 times most likely time plus pessimistic time divided by 6. This is the probability curve, the beta curve for the PERT. Here the time sequence is time duration of the activity is divided under 4 time periods: optimistic time, most likely time, expected time and pessimistic time. So what we expected time is the most time that we choose. Then comes the slack time. The slack time available for any task is equal to the difference between the earliest completion time ECT and the latest completion time LCT. Slack time is equals to LCT minus ECT. To reduce the overall project time, it would require more resources at extra cost to reduce the time taken by the critical activity to complete. Now, the management tools. PERT events, a point that marks the start or the completion of one or more activities. It consumes no time and uses no resources. Predecessor event, an event that immediately precedes some other event without any other events intervening. What is the successor event? An event that immediately follows some other events without any other intervening events. Now, what is the PERT activity? The actual performance of a task which consumes time and requires resources such as labor, material, space, machinery, etc. PERT subactivity. A PERT subactivity can be further decomposed into set of subactivities. Example, activity 1 can be decomposed into activity 1.1, A 1.2 and A 1.3. Now, what is float? It is the measure of the excess time and the resources available to complete a task. It is the amount of the time that the project task can be delayed without causing a delay in any subsequent task, that is free float, or the whole project, that is total float. Positive slack would indicate ahead of schedule, negative slack would indicate behind schedule, and zero slack will indicate on schedule. Now, the critical path, it is the longest possible continuous pathway taken from the initial event to the terminal event. It determines the total calendar time required for the project, and therefore any time delays along the critical path will delay the reaching of the terminal event at least the same amount. Now comes the critical activity. An activity that has total float equals to 0 is a critical activity. An activity with 0 float is not necessarily on the critical path since its path may not be the longest. Lead time. The time by which a predecessor event must be completed in order to allow sufficient time for the activities that must elapse before a specific PERT event reaches the completion is called the lead time. Lag time, the earliest time by which a successor event can follow a specific PERT event. Fast tracking, performing more critical activities in a parallel. Crashing critical path, shortening duration of the critical activities. Now, what are the steps in the PERT? There are 6 steps in the PERT specifying the activities. Then we determine the proper sequence of the activities. We construct the network diagram. 4th step is to estimate the time required for each activity. Then we determine the critical path and then we update the PERT chart. These are the 6 steps followed in the PERT. We have a start point, we have a finish point. Then we have the mark utilities, dog holes, blind. This is the PERT drawn for a particular project. So what are the advantages of the PERT? Expected project completion time. Probability of completion before the specified date we are able to know because of the PERT. We know the critical path activities that directly impact the completion time. We know about the activities that have slack time and that can lend resources to critical path activities. And we know the activities start and the end dates. What are the limitations? The PERT formula requires too much work. The network charts tend to be large and unwieldy. Calculating the time estimates is very complex for all the activities. Next, updating of the project is time consuming and requires high cost. And emphasis is laid only on the time factor and the cost factors are neglected. What are the difference between the PERT and CPM now? CPM, it works with a fixed determined time, whereas PERT works with the probabilistic time. CPM is useful for repetitive and non-complex projects, whereas PERT is useful for non-repetitive and complex projects. CPM includes time cost trade-off. PERT is restricted to time variable only. CPM is for construction projects and PERT is used for R&D programs. That's all about the PERT technique for project management. I hope the concept is clear to you. For similar kind of videos, keep watching RPIIT Academics channel. That's all for today. Have a good day. Thank you.